On June 3, 1960, three American businessmen, Martin Bromley, Irving Bromberg, and James Humpert, created a company called SegaGenesis in Honolulu, Hawaii. Initially, SegaGenesis focused on providing coin-operated arcade games to military bases in the United States. In 1965, SegaGenesis merged with Rosen Enterprises, a Japanese company founded by David Rosen. The merger resulted in the formation of Sega Enterprises Ltd. With Rosen serving as the CEO, the new company's headquarters were established in Tokyo, Japan. Under Rosen's leadership, Sega expanded its operations and began manufacturing its own arcade games. The company quickly gained popularity in Japan and became known for its innovative and high-quality arcade machines such as Periscope and Submarine. Sega's titles were well received and helped establish the company as a major player in the arcade industry. During this time, Sega also ventured into the distribution of pinball machines and other coin-operated amusements. The company's success in the arcade business allowed it to expand its reach and establish a strong presence in the Japanese market. Despite some challenges early on, Sega continued to thrive in the arcade industry throughout the 1960s. The company introduced several groundbreaking games, including the popular racing game Grand Prix. Overall, the 1960s marked the early years of Sega's history, with the company transitioning from a distributor of arcade games to a manufacturer and developer of its own titles. Sega's success in the arcade industry during this decade laid the foundation for its future growth and expansion in the video game industry. In the 1970s, Sega continued to solidify its position as a leading player in the arcade industry and expanded its operations both in Japan and internationally. The company introduced several innovative arcade games and made significant advancements in technology during this decade. One of Sega's notable achievements in the 1970s was the release of the first commercially successful arcade game, Pongtron. Developed in 1973, Pongtron was a two-player table tennis game that became a hit in arcades. This success laid the foundation for Sega's future endeavors in the arcade business. In 1974, Sega released Eliminator, an early racing game that featured a first-person perspective and a steering wheel controller. This game introduced a new level of immersion and realism to the arcade experience, setting a precedent for future racing games. Sega also made significant advancements in arcade technology during this period. In 1975, the company introduced the Motor Drive system, which allowed arcade cabinets to have moving parts and enhanced gameplay mechanics. This innovation led to the development of games like Motorcycle, which featured a motorcycle-shaped cabinet that players could ride. During the late 1970s, Sega also made strategic partnerships to strengthen its position in the industry. In 1979, the company entered into a licensing agreement with Gremlin Industries, a US-based arcade game manufacturer. This partnership allowed Sega to distribute Gremlin's games in Japan and expand its portfolio. Overall, the 1970s marked a period of solid grounding for Sega. The company's success in the arcade industry, along with its advancements in technology, established their name as a contender in the video game industry. In the late 1980s, Sega established itself as a major player in the video game industry. The company introduced iconic franchises, released innovative hardware, and made significant advancements in arcade and home console gaming. In 1981, Sega released the arcade game Frogger, which became a massive hit and solidified the company's position in the industry. This success was followed by the release of other popular arcade games, including Zaxxon in 1982 and Space Harrier in 1985. These games showcase Sega's commitment to pushing the boundaries of arcade gaming with their innovative gameplay and cutting-edge technology. In 1983, Sega entered the home console market with the release of SG-1000, its first video game console. Although it faced tough competition from Nintendo's NES, Sega continued to refine its console offerings. In 1985, the company released the Sega Mark III in Japan. which later became known as the Sega Master System when it was released internationally. The Master System introduced several technical advancements, such as superior graphics and sound capabilities, but struggled to compete with the dominance of the NES. However, Sega's breakthrough came in 1988 with the release of the Sega Mega Drive, known as the SegaGenesis in North America. The Mega Drive featured a 16-bit processor, superior graphics, and a robust library of games. It quickly gained popularity and became a direct competitor to Nintendo's NES and later the Super Nintendo Entertainment System (SNES). The Mega Drive introduced iconic franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog, which became Sega's mascot and a major success. In the late 1980s, Sega also made significant advancements in arcade gaming. In 1988, the company released Outrun, a groundbreaking racing game that featured a moving cabinet and immersive gameplay. This was followed by the release of Afterburner in 1987 and Golden Axe in 1989, both of which became arcade classics. From 1990 to 1995, Sega experienced both significant successes and challenges as it continued to compete. This period saw the release of iconic consoles, the rise of Sonic the Hedgehog, and intense competition with Nintendo. In 1990, Sega released the Sega Mega Drive Genesis in North America, which became a major success and a direct competitor to Nintendo's Super Nintendo Entertainment System (SNES). The console's library of games, including the Sonic the Hedgehog series, helped Sega gain a strong foothold in the market. Sonic the Hedgehog, introduced in 1991, became Sega's flagship franchise and a cultural phenomenon. The fast-paced platformer featuring the blue hedgehog quickly gained popularity and became a mascot for Sega. Sonic's success helped drive sales of the Mega Drive, Genesis, and solidified Sega's position as a leading console manufacturer. In 1992, Sega released the Sega CD, an add-on peripheral for the Mega Drive Genesis that allowed for enhanced audio and full-motion video capabilities. While the Sega CD had a limited library of games, it showcased Sega's commitment to pushing technological boundaries. In 1994, Sega released the SegaSaturn, a 32-bit console that aimed to compete with Sony's PlayStation and the upcoming Nintendo 64. However, the Saturn faced challenges due to its high price, complex architecture, and a lack of strong software support. Despite these difficulties, the Saturn did find success in Japan and had a dedicated fan base. In 1995, Sega released the Sega Nomad, a handheld version of the Mega Drive Genesis that allowed players to play their favorite games on the go. While the Nomad was technologically impressive, it faced tough competition from Nintendo's Game Boy and did not achieve significant commercial success. During this period, Sega faced intense competition from Nintendo and Sony, who dominated the console market. Sega's decision to release the Sega Saturn ahead of schedule and its struggles to secure third-party support contributed to its challenges. Despite these difficulties, Sega continued to release critically acclaimed games during this period. Titles like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Streets of Rage, and Phantasy Star 4 showcased Sega's commitment to delivering high-quality gaming experiences. Overall, the period from 1990 to 1995 was a mixed bag for Sega. While the company achieved significant milestones with the success of the Mega Drive Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog, it faced tough competition and struggled to maintain its position in the industry. From 1996 to 2000, Sega faced a series of severe challenges and transitions that would significantly curb its position in the video game industry. This period saw the release of the Sega Saturn, the introduction of the Sega Dreamcast, and the eventual exit from the hardware market. In 1996, Sega released the Sega Saturn in North America following its earlier release in Japan. Despite initial success in Japan, the Saturn struggled to gain traction in the highly competitive market, particularly against Sony's PlayStation. The Saturn's complex architecture and difficulties in securing third-party support hindered its sales and limited its appeal to consumers. In an attempt to regain market share, Sega made a bold move in 1998 by releasing the Sega Dreamcast, a technologically advanced console that offered online gaming capabilities and a strong lineup of games. The Dreamcast was well received critically and gained a dedicated fan base. It introduced innovative titles like Sonic Adventure, Jet Set Radio, and Shenmue, which showcased Sega's commitment to pushing boundaries in gameplay and storytelling. However, despite the Dreamcast's positive reception, Sega faced challenges in marketing and competition. The console faced tough competition from Sony's PlayStation 2, which launched in 2000 and quickly dominated the market. Additionally, piracy and a lack of third-party support contributed to the Dreamcast's struggles. In 2001, Sega made a significant decision to discontinue its hardware business and transition into a third-party software developer and publisher. This marked the end of Sega's presence as a console manufacturer. The decision was driven by financial difficulties and the desire to focus on software development, where Sega had seen success with franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog and the Yakuza series. Overall, the period from 1996 to 2000 was a long line of challenges for Sega. However, Sega's transition to a software-focused company allowed it to continue creating and publishing games that have left a lasting impact on the industry. From 2002 to 2010, Sega focused on its transition into a third-party software developer and publisher, releasing games for various platforms and expanding its portfolio. This period saw the continuation of popular franchises, the acquisition of new studios, and the emergence of digital distribution. In 2002, Sega released Panzer Dragoon Orta for the Xbox, marking the company's first major release as a third-party developer. The game received critical acclaim and showcased Sega's ability to create compelling experiences on different platforms. During this period, Sega continued to develop and release games for multiple consoles, including the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Nintendo GameCube. The company focused on its established franchises such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Phantasy Star, and Yakuza, delivering new installments and spin-offs that cater to fans. In 2005, Sega acquired British game developer The Creative Assembly, known for its successful Total War series. This acquisition expanded Sega's presence in the strategy genre and provided access to a talented development team. Another significant development during this period was the rise of digital distribution. Sega embraced this trend and began releasing games through digital platforms like Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network, and Steam. This allowed Sega to reach a wider audience and experiment with smaller, more experimental titles. In 2006, Sega released the critically acclaimed Yakuza, known as Ryuga Gotoku in Japan, a crime action-adventure game that became a successful franchise for the company. The series continued to grow in popularity and received sequels and spin-offs in the following years. In 2008, Sega released Sonic Unleashed, which introduced a new gameplay mechanic that combined traditional 2D platforming with 3D exploration. The game received mixed reviews but showcased Sega's ongoing efforts to innovate and evolve the Sonic franchise. Throughout this period, Sega also continued to explore partnerships and collaborations. In 2008, the company teamed up with Nintendo to release Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, a crossover sports game featuring characters from both franchises. This collaboration proved successful and led to the release of several sequels. Overall, from 2002 to 2010, Sega retreated to being a third-party developer and publisher, releasing games for various platforms and expanding its portfolio. The company still continued to build on its established franchises, embrace digital distribution, and sought new partnerships to bring its games to a wider audience. From 2011 to present, Sega continues to evolve and adapt the changing landscape of the video game industry. This period has seen the release of new games, the expansion of existing franchises, and a focus on digital distribution and mobile gaming. In 2011, Sega released Sonic Generations, a game that celebrated the 20th anniversary of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. The game received positive reviews and showcased Sega's commitment to revitalizing its iconic mascot. During this period, Sega also expanded its presence in the mobile gaming market. The company released a variety of mobile games, including adaptations of its classic franchises like Sonic Dash and Crazy Taxi. Sega recognized the growing popularity of gaming on smartphones and tablets and capitalized on this trend. In 2013, Sega acquired Atlus, a Japanese video game developer known for its critically acclaimed RPGs, including the Persona series. This acquisition expanded Sega's portfolio and allowed the company to tap in to Atlus' dedicated fanbase and expertise in the RPG genre. In recent years, Sega has continued to release new installments in its established franchises. The Yakuza series has seen continued success, with new entries and remakes being released. Sega has also revived classic franchises like Streets of Rage with the release of Streets of Rage 4 in 2020, which received positive reviews and reignited interest in the beat-em-up genre. Furthermore, Sega has embraced the concept of retro gaming by re-releasing its classic titles on modern platforms. The Sega Forever initiative, launched in 2017, offers a collection of Sega's iconic games for free on mobile devices. Players can enjoy titles like Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, and Golden Axe on their smartphones with optional in-app purchases to remove ads or unlock additional features. In addition to game development, Sega has expanded its presence in the entertainment industry. The company has produced animated series and films based on its popular franchises such as Sonic Boom and Persona 5, the animation. These adaptations aim to bring Sega's beloved characters and stories to a wider audience. Overall, Sega's history showcases its adaptability and willingness to explore new avenues in the gaming industry. From arcades to phone games, from pinballs to hedgehogs, Sega has captured the attentions of 3 generations of gamers. Only time will tell whether or not Sega's efforts ensures a 4th generation will share such fondness.